Anyway,
Interesting.
so questions.
I'll have to look into that. Thank you.
Yep.
So yeah, just going back over all the notes, and I rewatched all of the meeting, and I have a question about the motion, and this has come up from other individuals as well. Why hand out a motion to the public before hearing out the people who wanted to speak on the issue? There's almost the appearance that you went in there with your minds made up, and no matter what anyone said, you were going to vote the way you were going to vote.
By Tuesday night, we had what seemed to me a pretty robust debate of all of these issues, over the past nearly 2 years. I felt it was important to take everything that had been discussed over the past couple of years and think about an appropriate action step. I worked on that language in the days before the meeting. And so it included one piece that was a surprising and happy consensus for me, which is the all-way stop at Minnesota. If other outlets have described the all-way stop as a compromise, it isn't. I'm thrilled about the broad agreement about that. The major compromise was the one that I announced a month earlier, which was trimming back to Indiana.
Looking at Minnesota, you've got a couple of businesses, pretty popular businesses right there. So
front of mind all the way through.
What's that?
That they've been front of mind for me all the way through.
So putting a four-way stop there, what's that going to do for entrance and exits?
Sure. So I think the best way to answer that question is to remember the comment coming from Bill Sherrill, which was exactly on point. And Bill talking about how he knows that that the slower the speed going by his convenience stores, the more business he gets.
But he doesn't have a convenience store on Stanley Street.
Yeah? I'm sorry, what?
He doesn't he doesn't have a convenience store on.
He's making an observation
Right.
about his overall business.
Right. But
not me. I mean the four-way stop slows drivers all the way down.
Sure.
So Bill's observed that he gets more customers, and it does stand to reason, right?
I think
slower, that matters, gives just more time to think of pulling in.
But was that ever an identified need on Stanley Street?
Yeah, I mean, a core argument for me, all the way back to the very beginning, was that I've said over and over that that a big reason for me doing this is to help bring in more business to that commercial district. And, you know, at various points, the mayor has kind of, you know, either echoed back or kind of affirmed the rule of thumb that I've cited over and over again, that you know, all the experiences that the slower people go, the more they spend. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's pulling in, but there's also foot traffic, right? You know, I've always looked at that little commercial district as a crucial community neighborhood asset. Mm-hmm. If the experience here is like the experience everywhere else, Mondo will get more foot traffic in Rock and Roll Cafe, and Yugi will get more foot traffic in Stevens Point Liquors.
Mm-hmm.
Liquor.
And
that's why I mentioned. I mean, really, you know, it's counterfactual, but that's why I mentioned the sad loss of Shaw's Jamaican Kitchen.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not sure that foot traffic had anything to do with them closing. They were financially unstable from the start.
It's an unknowable, so that's fair.
I guess the question that's come up is Mr. Shorr, and I have great respect for all the Shorrs. I've worked with him on many stories. One of them coached my kids in football, so I worked with Mama Shorr for many years on stories. So this is in no way any kind of, you know, negative remark towards them or you. But Mr. Shorr does not have a business on Stanley Street, and the majority of business owners who have spoken up have said they don't want this. Why is their opinion not as strong of a motivating factor than, say, Mr. Shorr's or Mr. Featherstone's from Warzella?
Featherston.
I'm sorry, Featherston.
Well, the point from Warzella is a different point.
Right, no, but my point is there were a number of business owners on Stanley Street who've repeatedly said they didn't.
Any walk-in business.
Right.
Or drive-in business, for that matter.
Right. My point was, you know, why you've got business owners on Stanley Street who have repeatedly, and some loudly, stating they don't want this. Why is their opinion less of a motivating factor than these business owners who don't have businesses there?
Well, I don't know. I'm a believer in basing decisions and policy on you know, what's been the experience, what's been the data related to the question, and that's what I'm talking about here is the experience with street level local neighborhood businesses when you go from having shown that the slower people go, the more they spend. The two businesses that I just mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
stayed out of the fight.
Sure. Sure.
I have mentioned that I know of a business, right there, who was in favor, and got quieter because of the rancor.
Mm-hmm.
So, now we see what the impact is, and the things that have been unknowable will eventually be known.
We have data from the city and from the DOT pertaining to traffic crashes, ADTs. BPAC did their bike counts, which I was kind of surprised was not included in Mr. Badoon's presentation. Since, after all, bicycles are a central part of this discussion, so I felt those numbers should have been included in his presentation.
So, let's talk about three types of data, okay?
Yeah.
All right. One kind of data has been big object of this fight. We can kind of look at both sides of it again now, because I'm not sure these two sides have kind of really been fairly brought into, and I'll be direct, Brandy. I'm
Please,
speaking to you.
please be direct. Please be direct.
Right? All right. Of course, I understand that one of the critiques is that Stanley does not have its own special major safety problem. But I never claimed that.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That only undercuts my argument if I were making that argument.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
That's one type. Another type is another type of data is about a type of safety problem. And here, Stanley is as good a case as a lot of other places. And here's what it is. I'm sorry that Paul Piotrowski, didn't make it on Tuesday night, and maybe you can talk to him. But
I've talked to Paul.
We have a serious safety problem with cars hitting bike riders in crosswalks.
Where?
All over.
Okay, but...
But
where?
I'm sorry, hang on a second.
Yeah.
Bikes are on sidewalks. Sidewalks are a bad place for bikes for multiple reasons.
Right, right.
This type of crash is the most dramatic, but,
Oh, sure.
I'm sorry, were you...
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm sorry. I have a silent keyboard that I type on and take notes while we talk, so I have you on speaker. I'm alone in my office. I probably should have told you that at the start. I apologize.
Yeah. So, it's funny because I've been saying that, like half of my interactions with people on the other side of the debate have been pleasant and cordial, and half have been not. And like just in the last day, I've had an email, one of those more pleasant exchanges, and it's strange because it's a couple of areas where it looks like we don't have a big disagreement. One is the Green Avenue intersection, and the other is bikes on sidewalks, where most of the voices on the other side of this said, just let them be on sidewalks. At any rate, back to this idea of three data points and how they relate to the whole debate. So that's the second, which is how many crashes we have in crosswalks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is some of that, the responsibility of bicycles kind of just zooming into those crosswalks and not looking themselves? Sure, I mean, maybe there's some shared blame there, but what this lane conversion is aimed at, along with trying all over town to open up space on roads so that bike riders are on the streets where they should be instead of on the sidewalk, right?
Right, but it's not against city ordinance to ride your bike on a sidewalk.
I'm ready to take another look at the ordinances so that it reinforces the right rules. And in fact, that's one of the things I just said in today's email.
Yeah, I thought that would be another step for you on this.
It definitely, the ordinances and where they say bikes should be is absolutely something appropriate to look at here. So now the third type of data, this is where the Q&A from Jeremy Chapman come in, and the point was reinforced. By the way, we didn't know that another trained traffic engineer was going to show up.
I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head.
Right.
But
he
younger guy
who talked about it's overbuilt. But here's the thing about the numbers, right? There are roads on which you shouldn't do this.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the kind of accumulated experience with a lot of these and the whole field of traffic engineering puts that rule of thumb number around 20,000 ADT.
Yeah.
Right. So at its highest traffic point, which is out by the interchange,
mm-hmm.
ADT is about half that.
Right, about 11,000. That's correct.
And again, what was my compromise? It was up to me. I'd like this thing to go to Wilshire. Over time, I think we've been open that we think that this would work well all the way eastward. But for the time being, the compromise is
Sure.
And so the section that we're talking about, the ADT is more like 5,000 or 6,000. You know, like a quarter to a third of where congestion problems come in, right? So that's what I want to say about data.
I have to go back quick to a question I asked. I'm not sure if I caught your answer.
Yeah.
You had mentioned bicycles getting hit by vehicles was a serious safety issue, and I had asked you where those are happening, and I did you answer that? Or?
It is such a significant problem. Please, double check with SVPD, or again, I think on this whole area of some of these safety issues, Paul's someone who cares deeply about this, and knows a lot about it. From memory, something like half of crashes are
half of all crashes in the city.
Yeah, or half of. Double check, but a significant, I don't have everything at my fingertips. I've done as much, as much as I can. But I will say that one of my wife's students had it happen. At the famous division in Franklin. So it's a problem, and it's one of the multiple reasons to get bikes off sidewalks. I mean, the others being they hit pedestrians, and it's one of the things that always was a head scratcher for me is the idea that this causes a safety problem for people backing out of driveways, because it's harder to see because of the sharper angle. It's a lot harder to see bicycles coming up on you in your driveway from the sidewalk than, if and when we push them out. I don't know, what's that going to be now? It's going to be, 6 feet further out anyway.
Sure.
Right? Easier to see and less chance of hitting a bicycle as you're backing out of your driveway than if they were coming up on you on the sidewalk. I mean, yesterday was funny. So, started looking at Stanley with city and DOT staff and
I did, David. I drove by and I saw you. It was. I wish I'd had my camera with me.
Yes,
to see you and Ms. Jennings and Mr. Badoon was great.
I had to go play tennis after, but here's the point. What do? I observe the rules. I go all the way over to the right. Head down towards campus, and at the very same time, almost the same speed as I'm going along there on the right side of the road, somebody's going the same direction on the sidewalk across the street.
So because of there's almost an inconsistency. You've got some bicyclists who observe the rules and some who do not.
Totally true.
And
there's a range of behaviors, absolutely, and this is also came up in the email exchange that I had there's probably some confusion about the rules, some genuine confusion. There's also just flouting of the rules and bad actors. But the whole discussion of the issue definitely reflected that confusion, right? I mean, this was a very nice exchange that I had by email with someone today who's, who understood some of these safety problems with bikes on sidewalks. But, thinking back to the whole debate, a lot of it said that bikes should be on sidewalks. Right? Anyway.
So, I mean, as a parent, if my child, when my kids were 6 and 7, there's no way I would want them in a bike lane. I would much prefer just for safety, because kids fall. They fall off their bike all the time. I'd rather they fall on the sidewalk than in a bike lane. You know what I mean?
Right, but then they get bigger.
There is another issue that has not yet been publicly discussed regarding bicycles. Well, there are probably several issues that haven't been publicly discussed. I've heard the comments that, bikes don't pay taxes and all that whole argument. But look at the differences between a vehicle and a bicycle. A vehicle, if it hits you, it's probably going to kill you, or at least do extreme damage to you. If a bicycle hits you, you'll probably get hurt, but not nearly as seriously, unless it's some crazy set of circumstances. A car can easily cause accidents. So too can a bicycle. If I'm riding my bike in a bike lane and I hit a pothole or a weird-shaped rock and I fall and accidentally cause the car behind me to bump into somebody else, I'm not required by law to carry insurance. However, motorists are. So is that a conversation we need to have?
Possibly.
Okay.
Good thing we have a new commission.
What do you say to people who are angry over this process? And I have to preface this by saying I believe a lot, not necessarily all, but a lot of the anger comes from the process this has taken. Ms. Jennings held a few meetings before this was a formal city project and before she was on the council. And there was a meeting at Washington. I can't remember if you were at that one or not, but there were. Oh, that's right. You and Dugan hosted it, I think. And a number of people left that meeting believing this was an official city meeting, and this was now going to be an official city project.
I think we all agree that robust public discussion is a good thing. So I'm not sure not sure what the beef is against public discussion. I mean,
no, you didn't let me finish.
The moment that you're referring back to, if we wind the clock all the way back, right, to the summer of 2016, I didn't get us off on the best foot, and came to realize pretty quickly that my sense of, and this is kind of classic, I think, to people new in office, that my sense of the timeline was way over ambitious, right? And so, what the part of the timeline you're talking about in the fall of 2016, sure, it makes it tougher to get off on a bad foot, but the part of the timeline you're talking about is the time when it's shifting into giving it more of that time and more of that discussion, right? Whatever my regrets about starting out with an overambitious timeline, I feel like I put myself and my arguments out there in a pretty open and transparent way. And you want to know as well as anyone.
Yes.
But, a lot of that was in your pages.
Right. What would you say to constituents who say they feel angry that they don't feel like their opinion matters?
The nature of a full and robust discussion or debate is that we're all engaged in talking it through.
Mm-hmm.
And we did. The issue had people on both sides,
right.
And some issues are that way.
Sure. But I think some issues...
95, nearly 100% of the votes we take are, by the way, unanimous, right? So let's keep the whole picture of, the business and the decisions that, need to be made in local government, right?
But aren't most decisions made in local government based on safety, need, or functionality issues?
What's the question?
Aren't most decisions made in municipal government, or any form of government for that matter, based on a financial need, financial expense, or safety or functionality issues? Because none of those have been identified as issues on Stanley Street. When you take a look at the...
What did you understand proponents to be saying, if not arguing for the need and the functionality?
Right. Let me finish. The data sets and other information that city staff from all departments use to create new...
The community development director came out for it.
Well, I've read his memo several times, and from strictly a development perspective, yes, he did, but he also conceded that he is not a road expert, and that this was not his wheelhouse because we're dealing with a roadway. But I know that department works in tandem often with Public Works as well as all the other departments for the overall picture. But the systems that the city department heads and other staff have in place are there for a reason, because we have a finite pot of money to work with, and all of our decisions hold on. All of our decisions as a city need to withstand legal scrutiny because it is a legal body. So why not trust the department head that you hired, who presented, after months of gathering information, a pretty broad and comprehensive and in many ways in-depth, with the exception of not including bike numbers.
Again, I mean, it's like I've said why.
Okay, maybe I didn't. Okay, say it for me one more time, because maybe I'm not understanding. Because the director that we hired as a city to oversee our roads clearly stated that none of the concerns from residents.
Brandy, let me ask you a question. So here we have a debate with both sides. Which your side's better, right?
Yes.
Okay. This frustration. You mentioned the frustration on the side that the decision went against.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know how much hearing and understanding how's it gone from in the other direction?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
How has the exchange looked to you, and because
from the other side, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. I understand you now. I see one side screaming very loudly, and in some cases being very vulgar. But that does not, for me, diminish the weight of someone's message. I know it looks childish and immature. Not everyone is a good orator. Not everyone is eloquent with the way they write. Some people, all they have is vulgarity. That doesn't make their opinion any less. It doesn't hold any less weight with me. Unless you're in a bar and you're drunk and you're yelling, then your opinion doesn't mean crap. But I think whenever I encounter someone who's just being nasty like that, I always step back and look at why they're being so angry. There's got to be a reason.
Let me ask you, here we are talking,
mm-hmm.
Like an after action.
Yeah, kind of.
Right. An after action report.
Sure.
Debrief, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And as you reflect on kind of going through all this, your own feeling about kind of like about engaging with the arguments in favor and kind of kind of cluing in and where we're coming from and
mm-hmm.
And what we're saying and all that and would you say kind of you've got a handle on it all?
I would say, honestly, David, I'll be blunt. I think the two sides in this issue are speaking two different languages. When it comes to, you're a policy guy. There's a certain language that you use in policy work. Same with many politicians. There seems to be a disconnectedness between both sides. And both sides seem to believe they are rational and fact-based, and the other side does not agree. And it almost seems to be based on principle. When just speaking only about Stevens Point, there have been systems and policies in place for decades, arguably centuries. Does not mean they're all right. Does not mean we should keep doing it that way forever. But there are parts of this town that are rather progressive, but there are parts of this town that are not progressive. That being said, the vast majority of long-term residents here like their community because it's a mix of slow progressivism with traditional, quote-unquote, traditional American values. That little rock and roll cafe is a good example. It's a step back in time. You can go there and chew the fat and drink your coffee.
Did you hear me when I said that the 2 blocks of commercial district, and oh, by the way, I'd be thrilled if the intersection by PJ's, had the kind of businesses that were, kind of mom and pop, and
sure.
A muffler shop is a great thing.
Well, that is a mom and pop business. Right? That is a mom and pop business.
It is, but it's one that you only really go to when you need a muffler.
Right.
Right.
And the other side of the street used to be mom and pop businesses for a long time. There was a little.
I think you understand what I'm saying. You need breakfast.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
More regularly than you need a muffler.
Yes.
Right. Okay. But let's not talk about Maine. Stick a pin in that because, over time, but it kind of reinforces the point. Did you hear me when I said that a Maine, people can shout bike brigade all they want. I don't ride my bike that much. Mm-hmm. I use it to get to tennis because that's a distance. It's like a perfect distance I walk. It's a little bit too slow. It's too short to, be worth driving, right?
Sure.
Anyway, I turned left onto between Fremont and Michigan, and that's part of the problem with their proposal. But I'll come back to that. But did you hear me when I said that the 2 blocks of commercial district, Clayton to Lindbergh, are uppermost in my mind and have been all along?
Yes, I heard you when you said that.
I am doing this in significant part because of the value I place on mom and pop shops. Mm-hmm. If we're talking about the kind of the history of all this, sorry to be, revert to wonk stereotype, but this is the battle between Jane Jacobs and Robert Moses. This is, this is new urbanism that has its historical roots in the early 60s when the fight began over cars and concrete. Mm-hmm. And the whole underlying idea of new urbanism is human beings being social animals, that the health of a community is when you have street life. Mm-hmm. And when I say over and over and over and over again that wide strips of concrete are just for people to drive through and drive by, it's because a vibrant neighborhood, including a vibrant little commercial district, depends or is healthiest when instead of people just driving by, they're walking in.
What's interesting is I think if we were looking at a lane conversion on Price Street or Sue Marie or an actual neighborhood street, I really don't think people would be I don't think we'd be having this argument. You know what I mean?
Let me flip the question. Let me flip the question around. And this is a really interesting counterfactual, right?
Okay.
Would I have taken this on if that weren't a little commercial district? I don't know.
I don't know. I think that
I
might
really
be.
don't. I don't know if I would. I grew up in a city, right? It's probably a good, it's good I represent a part of town with these really small lots. By the way, did you notice? You would have been paying really close attention. This is a little obscure, but so I'm proud of having come up with the solution to garbage cans. I think it should have been easier for Cindy, but I'm the only one who remembered the earlier discussion, and so that put me in a position to help solve it. How it relates to my district is, and Ostrowski had a picture to put, a slide to put up, but I actually have a constituent. When we came up with a solution that's really going to work for most, it's like, it's hard to find someone for whom it won't work. But actually, I do have someone. So she got in touch, and I came over, and I looked at her lot, and said, oh, my God, wow, yeah, your house on this side goes, it's like 2 or 3 feet to the lot line, and, same on the other, and, wow, you're in a spot here with your options for where to put the can. Anyway. I digress.
Yeah, and honestly, David, that whole garbage can thing would have gone so much smoother if, no offense, you guys would have done your homework, because we had the same exact discussion, 3.5, 4 years ago.
Don't put that, Brandy, don't put that on me. You know why? I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Here's how I look at it. I have to look and the mayor, I think the mayor, somebody talked about the special issues that Cindy has being neighbors with the university, and Tori has being neighbors with all downtown, right? Mm-hmm. And I look at Cindy's challenges, and I have huge sympathy. It's tough. Mm-hmm. And so the garbage cans, it's totally understandable why that would be most sensitive for her, because she's going to have the rental neighbors that are most going to just put him any old where. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Anyway, in terms of homework, I don't think she got the help from City Hall that she should have.
From who? Oh, from City Hall. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
here's what happened. I shouldn't have been the only one who remembered back to the previous time that we looked at it, and made a mental note. Oh yeah, the side by sides, the duplexes with the garages that stick out closer to the sidewalk than the house. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, those are tough. Mm-hmm. Right, and it got to, I believe, within 24 hours of when the vote was first scheduled, and I went back and took a second look, and I said, "Whoa, we never. This was never dealt with. It was plain as day in council deliberations. Oh, look at the problems with that configuration on the lot." Mm-hmm. But I was the only one who, so I don't know homework. It's like, and I hit the pause button. Right, we kicked it for one more month because, just on the basis of being the one who remembered, we said, oh yeah, if the garage is closer to the street than the house, then the line that it should be back further than is the face of the garage. And oh, by the way, let's let people back, keep the cans backed up to the front of the garage. Boom.
Well, when the issue came up 3-4 years ago, it was heavily reported by all the major news outlets in the community, and all the information was widely available on the city's website.
Well, I I wasn't going to have the institutional memory going back that far, but I did have, if I may say, right, I brought more institutional memory just on the basis of 18 months earlier than anyone else had, right? But at any rate, that just relates to small lot sizes. But back to my counterfactual. I don't know. I certainly wouldn't have had the same motivation if it weren't for that commercial district. Whenever I've looked for somewhere to live, I think one of the essential things about a city is to be able to walk to things. One of the best conversations, one of the best conversations I had with someone on the other side of this debate. I've said before that those conversations were always better if we could kind of stretch them out and keep talking. And late in that particular conversation, the person said, and it was him, not me, said, what we should have in Stevens Point is that in any part of town, you can walk to a local shop.
I don't think
yes, amen, hallelujah, brother, testify.
But I think it's arguable that there are going to be certain types of businesses that aren't designed to be,
sure. Of course. Yes. Yes.
And this corridor, and I have to say, and this is totally anecdotal, but Stanley Street has in my experience, a hell of a lot fewer potholes than almost any other street in the city. It seems to have been constructed very well. And I think there's concern that hasn't been discussed about our future growth. As a city, we are expanding the only direction we can, which is to the east. So I understand this is temporary. We can change it back if we need to.
Traffic trend. The numbers are on their way down that way. Look, I'll tell you what. I'm about to read a book. You can have it next, and it's about this.
Okay.
You'll return it after you've read it, right?
Yes.
See my wife lend out music all the time, and it never comes back. Anyway, we don't have time to get all the way into that piece of it, but I have a book. It's about exactly this, about where does the traffic go. For our immediate purposes, the clear trend line for Stanley has been downward. I think in order for us to grow, that walkability is the coin of the realm. The way for all of these debates to be civil is to realize that everybody is speaking, out of love for our community and wanting the best for our community. Way up high on my list of why I worked so hard on this, as we've just discussed, is it doesn't feel good to have people talk about, call this a personal agenda, right? I know getting into this business, you gotta have a thick skin.
Yeah.
But
tell that to some of your brethren.
What's the personal agenda? What does that even mean?
I think people believe that because this flag, if you will, has been carried by Tori Jennings for so long. And she is part of the group who brought this forward and pushed this through despite all of the public objection. So when you bring, I'll give you an example. When you bring in Mr. Chapman, and I know his name was not put on the record at the meeting, but he did, and I felt bad for the guy. He did participate in the conversation on social media. You look at
but you see what he got back from the mayor? Come on.
I did see that. I felt I was watching it. Obviously, I did not participate. That would not have been appropriate. But I watched that thread, and I think he was out of line by stating...
But when do you move away and get excommunicated as a community member?
No. That wasn't the issue. The issue was that he publicly called out our public works director as being wrong. And... he's the only one who said that. Well, if our public works director was wrong, well, then why don't we fire him? We've hired this guy to recommend and direct. And
let's come back to economics, okay? That's where we were. And you know, why am I spending so much time talking? You know? Remember those transcriptions I'm supposed to be doing?
Yes. I just had a few simple questions.
Give me this. You know, Brandy.
I have very thick skin. Go ahead.
Am I going to get a fair? You know, like I'm choosing my words carefully here. Am I going to get a fair hearing with this interview?
Absolutely. And if you feel you need to say something off the record to me, I am not above an ass chewing. If you feel you need to say something like that to me.
Let me tell you what a proud moment was. And,
sure.
And, you know, it's late in the game now. And, it's like if we're... Yeah, I started out with an overambitious timeline. You know, like, I kind of stepped in it, right? But then from then on, like, for me, it's all been about a robust discussion. So... So when I gave you my first column, Sue Sullivan reacted to it and said, "Oh, isn't this nice to have a council member laying it all out where he's coming from?"
Mm-hmm.
All right?
Right.
So, come on. Who's been more transparent? Who's been more open? Who's put it out there more than me? About why?
Sure.
Who's put more effort into being clear? Right?
Right.
So, that's blowing off steam.
That's blowing off steam? That's all you got, David?
Well,
I'm joking.
Actually, I'm measured, and I, when you spend your whole adult life around policy debates, you learn to pick your words. So let's come back to economics. Growth. That's that's where we kind of got off onto the tributaries and twigs. So growth.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a specific area in mind for growth on Stanley? I mean, Stanley's pretty well booked up in terms of businesses and homes. It's not like a blighted area or anything. So what are you hoping for in terms of...
But it's that when someone on the other side of the issue said, everybody in town should be able to walk to the local shops. That's the essence of walkability.
Sure. So why not just stop at the improved crosswalk and four-way stop?
Okay, and we just go to Lindbergh. as a matter of fact, if we were talking about concentrating it on that piece that has to do with more foot traffic for Yogi and Mondo, yes.
Yes.
That's true. But here's the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
The millennials. It's a real thing. And that's, remember talking about Jim Featherston and Warzala and how
Yes,
that's
I
a
do.
different business concern? That's about drawing and keeping the next generation.
And aren't we already doing that, though?
Yeah, but we can't. That is not something to let our guard down about. I'm thrilled with how we're doing, but this is about keeping that going. And that's where I'll never be a transportation, a bike transportation user in the way that some others are. And so, that's understanding that, when we talk about future trends and desirability of location, that's where the whole network of bike infrastructure comes in.
Okay.
What was I going to say about that?
Who wrote the motion?
That's the difference. So that's the difference between Lindbergh and Indiana.
Okay.
Right? Although, let's not let David be too selfish here. Okay.
Okay.
I care most about between Clayton and Lindbergh. Alder Dugan cares a lot more about Indiana.
Right.
I think to get our money's worth, I think to get experience with it, that again, like Power King of the World. I guess if I were king of the world, it would go all the way to the airport.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were, I don't know, a benevolent dictator or something, I don't know, it would go to Wilshire.
Well, I think, can't we go to Wilshire? I thought that came up at the meeting the other night, that we are actually able to go to Wilshire. Was that green?
Wasn't the resolution.
Maybe that was green.
That was no. They're talking about they're talking about Maria and
it was Wilshire. Okay.
And the transition.
So I have to ask you about, because I had two more specific questions that I needed you to answer for this follow-up story. Who wrote the motion?
I did.
Okay. Did you get help from?
That's an easy one.
Yeah, very easy. Did you get help from the city attorney or the mayor or anyone in city staff or Mike Ostrowski or anything, or did you yourself write the motion?
I myself wrote it.
Okay.
Informed again by all the discussions, as well as Jeremy Chapman's analysis.
Yeah, why reach out to somebody?
By the way,
Uh-huh.
But here's the strange thing about that, right? So, how happy am I to find that there's, a broader segment of opinion welcoming an all-way stop at Minnesota, which really I guess I did hear voices, saying, why can't we have a traffic signal there? But it just sank in within the last week or two that that there was really broad support for doing something significant in Minnesota because, when a beacon kind of obscures that whole situation, because a beacon just waits for a pedestrian to show up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than, kind of being, rather than inviting pedestrians,
Mm-hmm.
which I feel like an all-way stop does, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with everything that's said about Jeremy Chapman, he's the one that kind of got all the way into the weeds of it, and looked at all the warrants and criteria, and figured out that standard practice, would put an all-way stop there.
How can you say
right?
he got into the weeds on this?
So he's there. He kind of helps reinforce the case for something that a lot of us on both sides of this actually agree on.
But you can't possibly believe that Jeremy Chapman actually did get into the weeds of this. All he did was review data sets. He said so himself. Scott Badoon has been in the weeds on this.
You asked what was the problem with what came from Public Works, and that was the part of the conversation where I felt like, have you been listening or not? Right? That was a 3-part proposal. So, just a minute ago I talked about the beacon piece of it, right?
Right.
Earlier when I was talking about my own biking habits, was reference to a second piece of it, right? Fremont to Michigan works great. It can function perfectly fine, with the exception of bikes on sidewalks.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a Paul Piotrowski mini-me. No, but seriously, right? Because there's that spot where the hospital parking lot entrance is.
Right. Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible.
That's a bad spot for bikes.
Yeah, bad spot for pedestrians, bad spot for cars.
Right. But let's not work ourselves into a froth here. That piece, it has no striping, and it's okay not to have striping.
Sure.
Oh my goodness.
That's my quote of the day right there.
That's a fun little agreement. Okay, I'll take that. So 1, 2, right? So those are two pieces right there.
Mm-hmm.
And the third piece was the Sharrows. So there's no mystery of why I didn't like there should be no mystery at all why I didn't like what came out of Public Works.
But just because you don't like it doesn't, it almost seems like you were searching for anyone who backed up your opinion just because you didn't like what our director had to say.
No, but come on. See, this is the thing.
But this is a legitimate concern from some people, so I have to ask.
Why is there a 20,000 ADT rule of thumb? Because there's so much experience with this.
Mm-hmm.
That, there are things that the things that frustrate me too about this debate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're all human beings, and it gets messy, and probably all have reasons that all have things that we're doing that frustrate each other. But one of those is pretending like we're dealing with this in a vacuum, pretending like this decision and this particular place, is disconnected from a massive amount of experience that there has been with this exact thing of converting 4 lanes to 3.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I have one question left that I need a specific answer on.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the motion you handed out,
Mm-hmm.
let me pull it up here, make sure I have it in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have a question about the first sentence. Prepare to solicit bids. That phrase.
Prepare, Alan. There's nothing going on with prepare. I don't know. Right? It could have just said, go out for bid in June. So I don't know. There's nothing behind the word prepare.
Yeah, and that's
Acknowledgement that there's work to be done. There's nothing there.
well. The thing about agendas and motions is there's no ambiguity. It needs to be specific, and it should be taken literally. And
There's work that needs to be done to go out for bid.
right, but
Yeah.
what does prepare mean? I mean, if you want to get anal about it, isn't that what we've already done? We already have prepared. So there's nothing specific about the wording here, and I
Oh well, yeah, no. Okay, then no, it's and yeah, the substance is go out for bid next month.
but that's not what the motion was. You know what I mean?
Huh? No, I don't.
The motion is
I
prepared to solicit bids.
The law also talks about common sense readings.
But common sense has nothing to do with Stanley Street. You've said that. Mary McCollum has said that. Tori Jennings. No, Tori didn't say that. Kathy Dugan said that. I want to be. I mean, we're a nation of laws. We're a city of laws and rules, and we need to be specific about what we're moving to approve here. And
what would the misunderstanding be? Like,
what does prepare to solicit bids mean? I'm no legal eagle. I have no law degree. I've never been to law school. I've been reading agendas for 15 years in this city. I've never seen that phrase anywhere. I don't understand what prepare means. Prepare could mean anything. Prepare could mean have a meeting and talk about it. We've already done that. What exactly?
It's connected with going out to bid. The department,
but it doesn't say that in this motion.
Has documentation and criteria and formats for the work that it puts out into the market for bids.
I understand what the intent is, but
okay, there you go.
Okay, that's not legally binding. I don't.
You understand? No, that's the point. You understand the intent.
I think everyone understands the intent. I'm looking at the language. I don't understand how this language is clear enough.
Ask the city attorney if that's a problem.
I already have. I've spoken with every department head in the city on this. I've spoken with the...
Is it a problem?
The answer I received from Logan is a shrug, and I don't know what to tell ya.
Did you ask whether Public Works doesn't know what to do next?
I can tell you, I've talked to every department head.
Huh?
I've got a call into the League of Wisconsin Municipalities and GAB. I'm telling you, I don't understand why it was worded this way.
Brandy, did you see us standing out on the corner yesterday?
Yes.
Okay. What did you take from that?
David, let's be clear. I'm not trying to be a smart ass. I'm not trying to paint anyone into a corner. I'm looking at the legality of this motion. And the wording of this not the legality, the wording of this motion and how it's legally sufficient. Because I just don't understand why that word was chosen. Prepare is not very specific.
You asked me to speak bluntly about
Yes.
Concerns about getting a fair shake.
Yes.
This, I don't know what the hell's going on with this question.
I'm not. It's not a trick question. You're not answering me. You might think you are. Maybe I'm just not hearing you. I don't understand how the phrase "prepare to solicit bids" is legally sufficient or meets a standard of criteria that makes this motion mean what everyone thinks it means. Maybe that's a better way to describe it.
After 2 years of debate, question about a redrawing the lanes,
Right.
was put to a vote. The redrawing of those lanes was described and given a timeline. Reference was made. Not only was reference made to the fact that this needs to be a bidding process, although if we're lucky, maybe a cost savings could be realized by tacking it on to Isidore, which could be an alternative, and save the taxpayer, if that's possible. I don't know, right?
How would you tack it on to Isidore?
Because after Isidore's reconstructed, stripes will be put on it.
But it's a completely different roadway, so how could you connect the two?
No, but you can do that. You can at amounts less than 15% of a total contract, which in this case would be about $300,000.
Okay.
You can do that. Now you have to, at amounts over 25,000, you have to officially decide, on the change. But presumably the whole idea is to get a great price on it, right?
Right.
But that's how you do it. Is that after Isidore's reconstructed, right? I mean, so there's going to be the company that does the construction, and then there's going to be a company that does the stripes. And so the question is whether the company that does the stripes would, at the same time that they're doing those, would do the stripes on Stanley for less than if it was.
I see. I see. Your gardener's here, so he's gonna mow the lawn too, kind of a thing. I see.
That'd be a lucky break. Cost-wise, that'd be a lucky break.
I see.
So not only is there reference to two going out to bid, as I explained in the meeting, the two options are put there because of the cost uncertainty.
Okay.
So, there's sufficient clarity to proceed.
You've heard of Edward R. Murrow, correct?
Yes.
He has this fantastic quote that I have adored for years, and it goes, anyone who says they really understand what's happening doesn't really understand anything at all.
So, what I need to go back to, most of my work lately has been evaluating organizations engaged with Capitol Hill. So these interview transcripts that I'm typing up all day are of are about congressional offices and how can this fellowship program that is trying to put technologists into congressional offices in order to get Congress to do a better job dealing with cutting-edge technology issues. So yes, in the same spirit of what's really going on, I'm trying to get to the bottom of how does somebody mid-career come into a congressional office doing day to day, and for the objective of getting Congress to be more fully engaged with the issues. So I think that's in the same spirit of why you're quoting Murrow.
Well, I was quoting Murrow. My intention behind quoting Murrow was, I asked you this question about the wording, and I'm not understanding.
You just wanted to check whether there's anything else going on.
And no, not at all. I had no personal agenda, no hidden agenda, no. It literally, from a journalism perspective, having read agendas for 15 years in the city and the village and the county, never having seen an emotion worded this way. It struck me odd from the start.
I know, but again, tree, forest, right?
Yeah.
We after nearly 2 years, we reached the decision point. It's changes to how a segment of the street works. It's going to need, and of course, this is what I'm, got my fingers crossed on now, right? Is what's the market going to do to price?
Right.
But another way to look at it is, you're a smart person. You've been doing this a long time. I've also been at it a long time. This might be one where your spidey sense is
tingling.
is making you overthink something.
Perhaps.
Because look at the fact that I wrote it a different way. I rarely use double spacing on a document. Why did I double space this document?
I don't know. For me, everything is double spaced unless it's written AP style. So that didn't stand out for me.
It could be. I did it so that if any revisions, and if someone for the very reason that you're raising this question had in the meeting said, could the word prepare be stricken? I would have welcomed that as a friendly amendment. I mean,
Interesting. Well, I genuinely appreciate the explanation on that question. I do, and I never thought there was anything maliced about it, or I thought perhaps it was just an error, but it just stuck out.
Intuition. There's drawing. A synonym in for me would have been drawing up. I don't know.
Well, why not sit down with the director or the city attorney?
In retrospect, right. In retrospect, the operative verb is put out for bid. Yeah. So why have a helping verb? No. I see it. But I don't think it has substantive. I think the 8-3 vote and the let's get out into the market next month is more consequential.
All right. David, you've answered all of my questions. Is there anything I did not ask you that you feel is important to include?
That's what I say at the ends of interviews.
I say that at the end of every stinking interview. I'm not the end-all to everything. There's tons of stuff I don't know. You don't know what you don't know, so you don't always know what to ask. And I say that all the time to Scott Benoon, the poor guy, and Corey Laddick. I'm constantly berating them with questions.
Now that we've talked about, I think, you understand what I'm saying about walkability?
I do, but I don't know if
elected.
Stanley. I mean, just looking at Stanley, that's
Oh yeah, no, totally. Totally.
that's an arterial corridor. That's not a neighborhood street.
Randy, and okay, and this is the genuine disagreement, right?
I think so.
Absolutely, exactly.
Long-term residents don't see it as a neighborhood road. They see it as an arterial corridor. They see it as a big portion of commuters from that side of the area come here,
There you go.
spend money here.
That's legit. That is legitimate disagreement.
Yeah.
And I think I've been, kind of out front and above board on that. Right. If you're okay with a highway-like feeling thing there, you're okay with it. Some of us aren't. That's right, and that's the essence of it. Because yes, walkability. From my side of the argument, I'm gonna overstate for hyperbole, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
From our neighborhood, we're all going to rush. We're going to be pulled from our homes.
The sky is going to fall.
Strolling on Stanley.
Sure.
Mondo's going to become a gazillionaire. That's walkability. That's walkability.
But if a minority of the community wants this change,
no, you don't.
What good are you doing for the entire community?
This is something you don't know. I don't know.
Exactly. So why not send it to referendum and get a real, genuine gauge of what the community wants? We could go on for another 3-4 hours, David.
Exactly. All right. Let's do the work. Because we haven't talked it all the way through, and now that we have, do you understand what the walkability thing is about now?
I understand, and I have for a long time. I've understood.
Okay.
I've understood what it is that the proponents are trying to achieve.
When I ask if I'm going to get a fair shake, it's because, and we did just note, what the kind of genuine disagreement is about, right?
Sure. Yes.
And when I press the question whether I'm going to get a fair shake, it's because your grasp of that idea has not been clear from your coverage.
I don't necessarily agree, and that's okay.
I think I'm fair to say that. I really do.
I think there is, if we're off the record here, I think there is I can be not crass. I can be abrasive. I think any good journalist, if they're not getting the answer to a question, not necessarily because you're not answering the question, maybe you just don't understand the way they've answered your question. That happens all the time. So if I'm not getting an answer to my question, I will keep asking it. I'll try rewording it or rephrasing it, or I'll wait a few moments and bring it back. I've never, David, in my entire career, had so much problem communicating with a group of people than this council. Never in my life have I had someone tell me to my face they felt I was personally attacking them because I kept asking for an answer to a question. I believe there are some people on this council with incredibly thin skin who become angry with me because I do not report the news they think I should. Because I ask questions.
But what I did is, I wasn't like, how can I describe the way that I see the skew in the coverage, and I think it is that. I think I finally found a way to give voice to it, and because I'm genuinely surprised. We have this conversation. It's a different conversation, a fuller conversation we've ever had, right? And I get to the end of it, and I ask the question that occurs to me because, and I say, where a lot of where I'm coming from is the walkability thing. I've said it in public over on Twitter, versus, which is all public, but
right.
I don't know, people don't look at. I'm a little bit of a different person over on Twitter. It's Facebook where I focus on being a local politician.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
I've noticed that.
I have said I've said publicly that that I read Jeff Speck's book on walkability and basically felt like I got my mission.
Mm-hmm.
And the past few days I've been joking, I feel like I'm Jane Jacobs reincarnated.
What's the author's name of that book? Jeff what?
Speck. But, I highly recommend it. It's very readability. Walkable Cities.
Mm-hmm.
Macomb has my copy.
I think part of the disconnect comes in where.
But if you're looking for feedback, there it is.
I am always open to feedback.
And I'm about walkability, and as a local politician, even though I haven't at every moment been as effective as I can,
mm-hmm.
I've hammered away those intentions
mm-hmm.
really clearly, and I read your coverage, and
mm-hmm.
and I don't. I'm not feeling.
You feel I'm biased. You can say it.
I'm not, because it's like I'm not seeing myself. I'm not recognizing myself. I'm not feeling like our side of the argument is being
mm-hmm.
described in its own terms.
It's been a very interesting change over the past, I'll just say 3 to 4 years, especially locally, when it comes to journalism. We used to have a number of I call us embedded. Gene Kemeter, I felt, was embedded in the community. We don't have those anymore. We don't have people anymore in this industry locally who can really
It cycles people through.
Oh, I know, it's terrible. And MMC is doing the same thing.
And there's something we can agree on.
I do feel badly for Joe Bachman because he's not a journalist. He's never had any training. He's been put in a difficult situation at MMC because after they bought the Gazette, both of their very experienced, fabulous reporters, Heather McDonald and Gene Kemeter, both quit. Because the company is run by salespeople looking at their bottom line. They're venture capitalists. They're not interested in journalism. And we have an enormous hole in local media.
Okay, but it relates to the dynamic that we've just been living through, right? Which is
it does.
What I was saying about it's one thing to cherish what is truly unique about a community.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing to look at an issue like this and view Stanley Street as somehow unlike anywhere else, and a place where that broader picture of what's being done in so many places isn't relevant.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you did express an interest in what's my beef, and and it is that it is genuinely surprising to me here today to kind of confirm that you get it with some of these things that I'm saying, because it's go back, look at the clip,
Mm-hmm.
Go back to the morgue,
Well, if it took me, if it took this long for you to believe that I'm starting to get it, what about the public?
No, seriously, like you observed up close my participation.
Mm-hmm.
That's the comic irony of, David wrote a resolution on his own.
There was nothing incredulous about my response. It was simply a question that I knew.
As somehow underhanded when we've been living through the most vociferous and out in the open discussion since Division Street, which I kind of came in on the heels of, right? That's funny. but in all seriousness, I have engaged
mm-hmm.
fully. And there's the person who how long have we been on the phone? There's the person who called me from outside the district,
mm-hmm.
who I spent an hour and a quarter on the phone with. The person who, and the payoff for me was hearing him say, in every part of town, everybody should be, a walk from local shops. Whatever my mistakes, and I'm human, man, have I put myself out there.
Well, I hope you understand that my asking about who wrote the motion was in no way a knock on you, or there was nothing. I wasn't surprised that you were capable of writing a motion. I simply needed to verify that you were the one who wrote it.
Fair enough.
That was just a simple piece of technical data I needed. So there was nothing.
I'm responding to people's frustrations with me from the other side.
Sure, and I would never. What was it that John Adams said? I would never congratulate any man who held the office of presidency. Would never congratulate another for having attained it. I feel your pain. I take a ton of criticism. I get called names. I've gone through terrible things that I'm sure is similar to some of what council members go through, and possibly the mayor and county exec and any other elected official. It's an extremely difficult job. But I think a lot of people feel like I elected you to represent me. It appears, the appearance is...
You understand what a cheat that is. You understand that declaring a majority is a cheat, right?
How is it a cheat?
Because you don't know. It's what I said in my public letter.
No.
It's a debate shutter downer. It's a cheat. Absolutely.
I guess I don't see it as a cheat, and I don't understand why. I mean, I read your letter. To confer on one side of the argument a claim of majority. Mm-hmm.
Is a short circuit. It's totally a short circuit on discourse.
But if you let me finish,
right.
The appearance is that the majority is in opposition. Therefore, wouldn't it make sense from, I elected you to represent me and this district, all my neighbors, and I'm paraphrasing what I've heard from other people, everyone I talk to says they don't want this. The appearance is there, whether it's true or not, the appearance is there that the council's made up his mind, they're going to do this no matter what I say, everyone I know was at that meeting and they all spoke against it, but they did it anyway. So I think there's a lot of frustration coming from that.
That was the difference between Tuesday night and the other meetings.
Not in the audience.
Okay, now go. When you count the presentations,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna have to watch it again. It will be more evenly balanced than March and more evenly balanced than December, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like when someone says that something that a good fortune thing is a blessing from the divine. What do you do with the misfortunes? Is that, and no, come on, no. Set that aside, if you will. Okay. Here's what you can quote.
Okay.
When opinion is divided,
Mm-hmm.
then that means that the representative can't follow everybody's wishes, because there are wishes on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
I was in one of the more pleasant discussions with someone on the other side of this issue, and we talked about, what should a representative do to know what the sentiment is?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer was, make 200 calls.
Mm-hmm.
To which my response was, on how many issues should we do that? We meet every month. We meet more than once a month. We make a lot of decisions. I grant you that they're not all equally controversial. But I don't know.
I think
if people paid more attention, maybe more of them would be controversial. But there's a lot of business that has to be done, and that idea of kind of maintaining a constant finger on the pulse and taking issues to referendum aren't as easy as they sound.
I think because the uniqueness of this particular issue, it wasn't brought forth by city staff. There was no clear established need by city staff. This was something that was introduced by a member of the council and was the subject of great debate. I think because of that...
So there may be people who think that the only way to decide something is by referendum.
No, I'm pointing out that this is a very different issue. Roads are roads. People are going to be mad no matter what you do.
The alternative is what we had.
But because of the controversial nature, perhaps alders should have picked up the phone and made 100, 200 phone calls to get a pulse on the community before they cast a vote. I think that's where the frustration
I think it's an unfair knock on all of us to think that we weren't listening. We were all listening. The thing we have to be careful about is the difference between listening and agreeing. And again, compared with other issues, this one's hard. This one is harder to reach a consensus on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm proud of those other situations, believe it or not, where I've worked to build consensus.
Mm-hmm.
And you should every time you can, but you can't always.
Sure.
All right.
If you're